Welcome to the Secrets of Qigong Masters, the talk show brought to you by Academy of Qidao, the first and only school in the world offering professional training in Qigong coaching. To find out about Academy of Qidao and the Qigong coaching certification programs, please visit www.qidao.org, QIDAO.org. This show is also brought to you by Mastery Journal, the international e-zine dedicated to mastery in Qigong, internal arts, and life. Please visit www.mastery-journal.com to read the latest issue of this publication. This show is also brought to you by the World Congress on Qigong that will be convening in San Francisco, California, on the last weekend of April 29th through May 2nd. To find out more about the upcoming World Qigong Congress, please visit www.eastwestqi.com, eastwestqi.com. Today, I'm delighted to reintroduce to you Dennis Lewis. He is one of the most remarkable teachers of breath work that I am aware of. He's a longtime student of the Gurdjieff work, Advaita Vedanta, and Taoism, who teaches the transformative power of presence through breathing, Qigong, meditation, and self-inquiry. Dennis is a co-editor with Jacob Needleman of two books, Sacred Tradition and Present Need, and On the Way to Self-Knowledge. A recognized authorities on natural, authentic breathing, Dennis is the author of the acclaimed books The Tao of Natural Breathing and Free Your Breath, Free Your Life, the 3-CD audio program Natural Breathing, and recently released book Breathe into Being, Awakening to Who You Really Are. Dennis Lewis studied with several Taoist and Qigong teachers, including Dr. Wang Shanglong, Mantak Chia, and Bruce Kumar Francis. His main teacher in Gurdjieff's work was Lord John Pentland, the man Gurdjieff chose to lead the work in America. He also studied for 3 years with Jean Klang, a remarkable master of Advaita Vedanta. Welcome to the Secrets of Qigong Master, Dennis. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hi, it's great to be here again.
I know that you are about to take a trip to California to go to Esalen Institute, where you're going to be teaching a workshop. So without any further ado, perhaps we can jump into a little explanation about what is it that you're going to be teaching and how people can benefit from that.
Great. Well, the title of the I see it's a workshop, and it's also a kind of retreat because it's 5 days long. It's from March 13th to 18th, and Esalen, as many people know, is one of the most beautiful spots on the planet in Big Sur, California. It's going to basically be oriented around my book, Free Your Breath, Free Your Life, and we will work with many dimensions of breathing, from physical aspects to emotional aspects, mental and spiritual. And in addition to that, and a lot of hands-on work, because I tend to work with relatively small groups where we can work with each other and I can work with each individual. So there will be lots of hands-on work. And I'll also be teaching a form of Qigong that I created and I introduced at the National Qigong Conference a couple of years ago in California, called Humming Breath Qigong. And I'll just say a little bit about that because it's interesting, the genesis of that, and I think it will help explain a bit of some of the work that I'm doing. One of the things that interests me the most about working with the breath is opening up the breathing spaces of the body. And not many people think about their breathing in terms of the actual spaces through which the breath manifests, through which the breath engages So I have been working with this for a long time, and it came to me after having been to many Qigong conferences, both the American Qigong Conference and the National Qigong Conference, that many people were coming and were teaching wonderful, wonderful things, but they were teaching in 2 or 3 hours material that you can't teach in 2 or 3 hours. These people can't take home often very much. And I went to a lot of these classes and worked with a lot of the different masters, and I said, wow, this is so interesting, yet at the same time very difficult, because how do you teach so much material in such a short time? So I began to think about how I could combine the work that I do with the breath very directly in a form of what could be called Qigong, energy cultivation, a form of movement and energy work that would be very easy to learn, but that people could learn the basics of in 3 hours. Of course, there's many more dimensions to it that we could go on longer, but they could actually go home with something after 3 hours. And thus came Humming Breath Qigong. And it was kind of interesting.
So it's like a breathing teachings light, or feather light, something that can be packaged in a 3-hour long presentation, and people actually will learn that and will be able to take it home and practice it.
Yes, and not only that, but they'll really enjoy it. When I introduced it at the National Qigong Conference, there were both students, Qigong students, and Qigong teachers there. And one of the teachers, one of them suggested that I call it Hummingbird Qigong, because she said it was so beautiful. Just doing it felt so beautiful to her, and the others agreed. And so it's actually quite a profound practice, because through the form, I can teach principles that I can teach without the form, but the form allows people to do something every day. They can do it in 5 or 10 minutes and start out their day in a very powerful way, opening up some of the breathing spaces of the body and beginning to move energy through some of the energy meridians and channels and so on. And so it's quite a wonderful practice, and that I'm going to be including in my Esalen 5-day retreat.
Fantastic. Well, I would imagine that a number of our listeners are familiar with different types of Qigong and breath work and various related disciplines. So how would you describe what it is that you teach in comparison to any other systems that you're familiar with? What is the similarity and what's the distinction that makes your work a specific, unique style of Qigong?
Well, in terms of the work that I do, both the breathing work and this particular form, I have taught other forms of Qigong. I was certified for a while to teach some of Bruce Francis's work, although I didn't get recertified, so I'm not doing that anymore. But and also Mantak Chia's work, and I've never gone through recertifications. But in terms of my own work, which really has come out of years of study and years of first-hand experience in the Gurdjieff work, awareness and consciousness, and in Advaita with self-inquiry, and in the Taoist tradition with Qigong and things like the inner smile meditation, and so many things out of the Taoist tradition, a lot of the Qigong that I've done. And what that all has kind of what's emerged out of all of that is, I don't know how to compare what I do with what anyone else does. I've stopped doing that. I just don't compare anymore, but I can tell you what I do. So what I do is basically work with presence, because that's the first thing. If people can work with presence, can work with more and more intimate awareness of themselves in the moment now, then the other things that I can teach or that I can show them have many, many more benefits than if they are not working that way. So for me, the real real aim of what I'm doing is to help open us up to who we really are. And we talked about this in the first interview you and I had about the sort of the true nature aspect of ourselves. Well, maybe we'll get into that later. But in any event, the idea is to awaken right here and now. And the breath, of course, is an immense part of that, because the breath can help connect us to now. It can remind us that we're here. And then the question is, all right, now how do I work with the breath? Well, the first thing is, you don't do anything with the breath. You don't try to force the breath in any kind of way. If you do, the people who do try to force the breath, it's usually the mind that's trying to manipulate the body in some way. The mind is telling the body it should breathe a certain way. And of course, the body knows best how to breathe. If we can release unnecessary tension, if we can release some of the anxiety that we have, if we can begin to put ourselves in question, feel ourselves in question, if we can begin to become quiet inside and sense the origins of the breath. So really my work at the beginning is to help people become aware of how they're actually breathing. What's actually happening? Begin to feel this incredible miracle that we call breathing. It's a miracle. It's our life. It's happening right now. And we take it for granted, or we think we can just manipulate it. So that's one of the first aspects, is to begin to feel a different dimension of what breathing is all about. That breathing connects me with the unknown. It connects me with God. It connects me with the cosmos. It connects me with emptiness in the Buddhist sense. It connects me with non-duality. All these things, or whatever you want to call them, it connects me with who I am at a deeper level. And so part of that work, then, is to begin to discover the kind of inner spaciousness. If you think about it, Lama, for a minute, and I know you have, for sure, and probably many of the listeners, but when you breathe, when the inhalation takes place, you're breathing space into your body. Yes, it's oxygen, and it's chi, and it's all these energies and so on, but in a certain sense, it's space. And many of us don't experience ourselves as spacious beings. And so one of the first things I like to say, or like to have people try, is learning how to breathe space into space. Beginning to
how to breathe space into space.
Yes, the space of the air and the atmosphere into the space of the body. And,
okay.
and it's very interesting when people get that, when they suddenly say, "Oh, I got it, I understand," and then there's a kind of gentleness that takes place in the breath. There's an opening. There's an openness. There's not this mind trying to make the breath happen in a certain way. And as you
it becomes more natural.
Yes,
it becomes less contrived.
Absolutely.
And more natural. Well, of course. What can be healthier than being natural?
That's right. But the idea of spaciousness is one that very often is not really connected to the breath. People are saying, well, you have to breathe slower, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to breathe deeper, you have to use your diaphragm, you have to use your back, you have to use your back. All those things may be true. They may well all be true. But the body knows how to do that once you find a different relationship with yourself. And then...
So let me ask you something.
Sure.
Do you actually practice any of the Taoist types of breathing, or you only breathe naturally?
Well, some of the Taoist types of breathing are oriented around natural breathing. For example, belly breathing. The idea of the belly expanding on inhalation and retracting on exhalation. That's one of my foundation exercises. And that really, for me at least, came out of the Taoist tradition. That has led to so many things. I was a practitioner for a while. I was certified by Mantak Chia, but studied with some other practitioners as well in that discipline. I was certified to teach Chi Tsung, not to teach, but to practice Chi Tsung. Chi Tsung, you're familiar with that, I take it.
Well, perhaps so you can share with our listeners what it is.
Well, Chi Tsung is internal organ Chi massage, and it's where you go in with your hands and using ingredients of five-element theory and Taoist teachings and acupuncture and so on, with your hands you begin to open up, you begin to massage the various internal organs, and you can go down to the spine and you can work with the nerve plexuses. And I, for a while, worked with, I was invited by a senior instructor in the Healing Tao, who is also a well-known San Francisco acupuncturist, to work in her acupuncture clinic in San Francisco. And I worked there part-time for about a year. And I worked with a lot of people who were, well, not a lot, but several people who were dying. And one notable case was a man who had AIDS and had AIDS wasting syndrome and hadn't eaten anything for several months and was basically had to be fed intravenously and was down to like 80 pounds and could barely move. He needed a caregiver to take him around various places, take him home. And I started working on him, and I began to sense, and I had already had many Qi Tsung sessions done on me, and that's when I began to understand about the breath and spaciousness, because I began to experience the space, the internal spaces in my own body as, you know, alive, as living spaces, as openness. And many things had happened as a result of that, which I describe in my first book, The Tao of Natural Breathing. But as I worked on this man, I decided that his breathing was so collapsed, and his relationship to himself was so tight and was so tiny. He was just barely alive, really. And so I said, well, what can I do to help him? And I didn't know, I really didn't know, but my hands instinctively kind of started working with his belly. And then the thought came to me, it said, well, the thing he seems to lack is a hunger right now for life, is hunger, because he doesn't even eat. So I began to work with his belly and with his internal organs, but mainly with trying to open up the breathing spaces, to begin to feel that there was some kind of energetic flow there, some kind of sense of life in his belly and in his lower back and around the hara and the lower dantian area. And as I did that, I saw him once a week. Within 3 weeks, he started wanting little snacks. Within a couple more weeks, now, mind you, he had been getting acupuncture, he had been going to MDs, he had been doing all kinds of things, and he was getting worse and worse. And he began to eat. And not only did he begin to eat, but pretty soon he was off the feeding tube. He gained back about 50 or 60 pounds, and he just decided then that he probably didn't have much more time to live. And so he went on a cross-country trip with his lover, and he did all the things he ever wanted to do. He began to sing. He put on a concert. He did all these things that he had wanted to do. And so he had one more year of life. And this was all, it came from just reconnecting him with his own core. And his beginning to have a hunger for life and for food, and beginning to feel that his breath was part of that. Nothing that remarkable that I did. I really didn't do much, except I was just there with him to remind him of something that his body already knew and had forgotten. So a lot of the work that I do is how to release the unnecessary tension, how to open up our attitude towards ourselves in such a way that the body and the mind and the emotions can begin to do the work that they really are designed to do. I mentioned to you as we were talking earlier that I have a center called the Center for Harmonious Awakening. And that's really connected with that, because many people work with the mind, or they work with the emotions, or they work with the body. But we have to work with all three if we're going to have a real transformation.
And we also perhaps realize that there are not really three separate things to work with. It's one and the same energy field that we are. It's just different perspectives yield different perceptions of what we think we are. We may consider ourselves a physical body, or we consider ourselves a conscious entity, or we can consider ourselves an emotional being, but it's the same. human being.
Yes, it is the same. At a higher level, it's the same. You and I would agree on that. I have no issue with that at all. But there is a sense in which you have to begin to recognize that, for example, thought, the kind of thought that most of us are familiar with, is often very manipulative. And the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about others, the way we think about doing our practices, it's very manipulative. It's very, very calculative. And it often is very constricting. So we have to learn to see our thoughts. And many people are not really aware of their thoughts. They're not aware of their sort of concepts that are guiding and tightening and making their bodies ill and so on. Yes, they're connected, body and mind. It's all connected, but at the same time, we have to get familiar with our thoughts and begin to see how our thoughts are affecting us. Likewise with the emotions. I've worked with many people who have a kind of basic negativity toward themselves. And that basic negativity toward yourself has to be seen. It has to be seen inside the spaciousness that begins to open up. And the space itself, the emptiness, the awareness, presence begins to transform that. But if one doesn't see it, if one just goes out and does Qigong, says, okay, I'm just going to do this practice, you could do Qigong, or you could do yoga, or you could do dance, there's a lot of things you could do for a long time. But if you don't see that what you're bringing to it is keeping it from making it almost impossible for that form or structure or activity that you're doing to really help you, then it's kind of useful.
Well, that's as long as we're doing a form.
I'm sorry?
That's as long as we're doing some kind of form or formal routine. When I say I'm practicing Qigong, I don't do any forms. And so that practice is all about recognizing the flow of energy that serves as an interface between the mind, body, and all the other aspects of who we think we are. And embraces all those aspects, making them all one.
But how does that energy
get... That is the essence of energy.
Yeah, so again, I agree with you, but how does that energy get utilized? So, for example, I know people, and I'm sure you know them, and I'm sure you've gone through it in your own experience, as I have personally, where you get a lot of energy. You practice you do your practices for a certain period of time, and then that energy that you get, or that comes to you, or arises, that is a much deeper kind of energy. How does it get utilized? You can see it being used often in negative ways by people. It can.
Well, that's why I don't do what most people do when they practice Qigong. I don't get energy, like you put it. I surrender
the energy that's there may begin to manifest in ways which are not from the wholeness itself. I mean, after all,
so that's exactly the idea that you don't accumulate the energy, or you don't direct it where you think it should go. You actually learn to recognize that energy knows where to flow. And then you allow it to flow freely, and then you flow with it. The only thing you can do about it, that flow, is to surrender to it.
Yes.
That's how you become present. That's how you become one with the flow. That's how you experience what it's like to be in the flow, is it not?
Well, I want to say yes and no, because first of all, there's a whole practice that leads to coming to that. In other words, what you're talking about is after many years of how to put it, practice, however you want to put it, work with your energy, whatever words you want to use, but many years of work with your energy, right?
About 3 months is just about the amount of time I require that the people would study preliminary practices before they would receive initiation into this type of work.
Right. So, but still, they have to go through a process with you.
Right.
And there are many people listening now who are probably not familiar with your work and not familiar with my work, and are doing certain kinds of Qigong, but maybe with different attitudes than you and I have. So part of what
we have a listener who's just called in with a question. Would you mind taking a call?
Sure.
Hello, the listener calling from the area code 941. You're on the air.
Hello, my friends, and thank you for taking the phone call. I think I talked to once on your show, and thank you for about 3-4 months ago. This is Andreas, the Greek. Probably you're familiar with my voice now, and I love a lot of your theories there. But I'm Greek, and Greeks have a problem with going with anything. And we're kind of rational beings, and, energy is such a plug-in word. Everybody uses energy wherever it is, reading the dead or doing the future or creating wealth. The plug in that world in everything is like, I don't know, there's some words that just plug-ins, like the young girls that say, I don't know, certain words, some words that just plug into everything. And I respect how much you put into your art, because the way that I read the energy is direct focus, where you either you flow with it, either you surrender to it, or you perhaps you project it. There is just nothing that another word for emotion. You can flow with the energy of the place, or if the energy of the place is negative, you can do something to create your own energy by going within yourself and tapping into an inner field of positive energy within you. So there's different levels of energy. I don't like, the way that you frame an energy is fantastic, and I admire both of you, because you have you're people who have you're loyal to what you're doing, and you have created a skill and a practice. So I'm going to surrender to that, or I admire that, but I don't like the word that, you go to Machu Picchu is energy, and you go to Aztec's Maya's energy, you go to Stonehenge energy. And you know what I say to these people? Why don't you go to MRI machine or to CAT scan machine? It has 20 times more energy, all right, and you're going to be fried, I don't think the word energy by itself means anything unless we know what we're talking about,
Well, probably as a Greek know better than most of us what you're talking about.
I don't know anything.
I believe that ancient Greek philosophers were probably among the first ones who identified energy as the true essence of everything.
That's true.
That's true. Modern philosophers and scientists would always agree that everything is made of energy.
That's true.
Yeah, energy equals MC squared.
Yes.
So everything that is in this world is energy. If we learn how to relate to the world and everything in it, if you're crossing
the street and the bus comes down the line, is not an energy, it's a bus. And if you're eating a hamburger,
it is energy that manifested in the form of a bus.
Yeah, but if you cross the street,
if you pay attention to the flow of that energy instead of standing in the way of the flow, you will probably learn how to go with the flow or yield to that flow, so you don't get hit by the bus.
I agree with you.
Andrea, I would like to. I agree with you. I am one of those people. Let me just say this. I agree with you about one thing. Energy gets used. The word energy gets used in all kinds of ways. And if you were to come to one of my classes and so on, yes, I'll occasionally talk about energy, because part of what we experience is energy. But let me go a little bit deeper into this, because you remember earlier I was talking about the spaciousness quality, the openness quality. Now, in the Taoist tradition, in the beginning, you have the emptiness. It's in all the traditions. You have the emptiness. You have the and from that flows all sorts of things eventually. Now, in my own work that I do with the breath, and in my own work I do with the work with awareness of who we really are, there's really two things. One is to begin to experience those energies on the one side. Yes, absolutely. but to begin to experience the different forms they take, because many people are, very emotional, but they don't see how their thoughts are affecting them, or they don't see how their body is affecting them. But underneath all of that energy is coming from someplace.
Sure.
That energy is coming from what I call, let me ask you a question. Let's put it this way. As you listen, or if you take your hand and you look at your hand, just put your hand in front of you right now and look at it. And now ask yourself, who's looking?
Well, I can answer that question. I can answer that question very easily. You can go through layers of consciousness. You can say the observer, me, or looking at my hand or looking at the mirror. I can disassociate my ego, who am I, when I'm realizing myself. I may get scared because Andreas is not where I really am. So we have a sense of detachment that becomes a part of attachment, but they all coincide back and forth. We know the gap of coming from nothingness into somethingness, from energy, from wholeness into to the individuality. I wrote books and I have seminars that people come throughout the world in the Greek islands to listen to me talk about meditation. So you're talking to somebody who people pay about $2,000 for a couple of days, okay, just to get that thing out of the way because it's kind of important. There's all the kinds of theories about anything, from hypnotism to leadership to anything in life. If I say A, you say B, and if you say B, you say A. We can come from wholeness into duality. Is there a duality? Is there not duality? If there is duality, maybe it's not. Everything is united by energy. And so we can talk about psychobabble, mabble, philosophabble, and any kind of bubble but the truth is none of us truly knows. The only thing that I agree with you, gentlemen, is this, and you're right. The Greeks got it right, but forget about the Greeks because really I'm very Greek, but I'm a citizen of the world. I'm really, sometimes I'm very arrogant because I believe my own bullshit. But, but that's not right. I'm open-minded as much as I can. Yes, we're energy in a deeper level, and I totally agree with you. And yes, we have to let go of the illusion of who am I in order especially to deal with a fear of death. And because that's underneath of all spirituality is the fact no matter how much control we have no control. We're going to get older sooner or later, and we're going to vanish. But the inspirational mind, afraid of that. We want to look at everything as an energy and everything as a spirit and a different forms of language. And you know what? I do believe in that. I do believe we're internal for a lot of ways, but I'm just saying to you, all the spiritual ways they're coming nothing from a place of somethingness. We create something because we're too scared. When we look at the mirror and I look at my hands, and if I will stay there, I will become scared. For somebody who charges $2,000 for 2 days of seminars to say that, is something very gutsy. Because most people sell mastery. People make $20 or $30 an hour telling people they can do it all, know it all, have it all, that they're God in embryo, God in development, energy in becoming, and on and so forth, that the real self is not the self that they are, and it's something deeper. You know what? I'm Zorba. I like my fears. I like my fears. I like my anxiety. I like my greatness. I like my heroism. Without my fears, there would have been no need for heroism. The fact that the hero in me lives is because the weakest part in me lives. If there was a mastery, there would have been no need for heroism. And if there was a mastery, there would have been no need for me to be brave. The fact that all of us go through drama of life is what creates us to be heroes in some way. And I drink and I dance and I make love, and I have a lot of friends who look at the sunsets, the blue waters. And you know what? I like my human drama as well as a sense of detachment. Of course, I practice that, and it doesn't have to be Eastern religions. The fact that I have to relinquish, because now how strong I am, I can be the 300. There's a Hollywood movie from the Greeks. We're all going to go from this world, and we can find healing into the thought that, yes,
Andreas, let me ask you a question. because we're really here to talk about the breathing and some of the work that I'm doing. And you're really giving a lecture now on you.
Yes.
And that's fine, and that's good.
That's not wrong. Fine. It's not good. It's wrong.
Okay, but what I need to say is it's just the way it's happening. And now my question to you is, you came on here originally talking about energy, and energy is a very interesting, it's a powerful issue. I'm trying to raise another question, and that is that what lies behind the energy, and the way I work with people with the breath is you begin to discover that what lies behind it is unknown. And you become more interested in the unknown than in the known. You begin to feel the miracle of your life. I don't care what philosophy you take, you or me or anybody, what tradition, what words you use, but if you don't feel the miraculousness, the miraculous nature of being, of presence, of being alive right now, then you can study energy and flow with energy and all that stuff forever, and it's not going to mean a thing.
You're right.
So with the breathing work that I do, I use the breathing as a way in, because you'll notice after the out-breath, I don't know if you've noticed that, probably you do meditation, you'll notice after the out-breath that there's a gateway into emptiness. And that gateway is not a gateway that's there to, be filled with energy or to be filled with whatever, or philosophy or thoughts, but it's an entryway into not knowing, into just not knowing, and instead being. And so, in a certain sense, I agree with you, because all that stuff that we say about ourselves, in a certain way, it's just nonsense. It's just all our programmed thoughts. It's all the things. It's ego. It's vanity. It's all this stuff.
I'd like to thank you. I don't mean to come. I thought I was kind of rude, so I apologize for you guys. You have a great program. I have a breath programs myself. Something's called alpha pacing, which is nothing but a pacing of the breath. So I do have, techniques that are copyrighted and taught throughout the world as alpha pacing. I don't know if you ever heard of that. And I'm gonna give samples in the next, because under my publisher the next few weeks I may talk on the little radio where I talk about the waveform. But I don't want to take the forum. I think I've been kind of rude. I want to thank you very much, gentlemen. And what you put lately is just beautiful. Through the gaps of the breath, or through tuning into the breath, you have a sense of wholeness, or sense of detachment, sense of authentic spirituality, of oneness, and a sense of security that is kind of intuitive and magical, that it flows through the back of you. What you said, both of you hit back. I drifted a little bit away, so forgive me. I had one glass of wine, so
all right. Good talking with you anyway, Andreas.
Enjoy. Be well, gentlemen, and you're doing a great work. Thank you very much for taking the phone call. Be well, guys.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And once again, if you're interested in calling in with your questions, or would like to make any comment about what you hear in our talk show, please feel free to call in at 347-327-9635. Now, as we return to the interview with Dennis Lewis, let me ask you, Dennis, what would you say brings the students to study with you? What is it that motivates them to actually start learning about your breath work and other techniques that you share?
Molly, you had asked me that, you had put that question on the email you sent me, and I don't have a clue. I mean, in fact, I really don't know. All I know is that the people I work with over a period of time are people that I feel connected with, that feel connected with me, that we can have a conversation, that we can feel a kind of sense of friendship and even love and openness. And even my students who come that I've never met before, the ones who, most of them really enjoy the classes. Occasionally I get someone who maybe doesn't enjoy the class. That's fine. But there's a kind of connectedness in which we begin to feel together a sense of the mystery. And I think what attracts, if I had to put it into words, it's just that I do feel the mystery. I feel this sense of the unknown quality, and it's not a matter of thinking about it. It's a matter of, in the sensation and the feeling and the thought, that they all begin to come out of this this sense of not knowing. not knowing really who I am. And it's the not knowing itself, which is, it's the presence itself, which is who I am. I think as Eckhart Tolle once put it, and I love that way that he put it, he said, now is who we are. And in a certain sense, that's right. It's not the energy, because the energy comes and goes. Sometimes we have a lot of it, sometimes we have a little of it. Sometimes we're flowing with it, sometimes we're struggling with it. There's all kinds of things that happen. But it's the nowness of all of that. It's the ability to witness that, to be present to it, to have the space to allow it to be, just to allow it to be. And so, maybe there's, what attracts us to each other, the students and myself, in terms of working together. I think it's more that quality of, the presence is more important than the thoughts. The unknown is more important than the known. And those of us...
Well, it's interesting that you put it this way, that the unknown is more important than the known. So, in other words, we can dwell in the unknown without ever getting to know it, or do we actually begin to understand it and we become more aware of it as we experience it more?
Well, I would say in my own life and experience that finally awareness is who we are. Is that knowing it? Or is it awareness in action right now? Aware of my thoughts, aware of my sensations, aware of my emotions, aware of what's going on in insofar as I can around me, in our conversation, as Andreas was just on the phone. Awareness is who we are. Now, can I say I know awareness? No, because that implies there's another person or something who's aware of that. And we get into it. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing that we get into here. But finally, awareness itself is the unknown, because we don't know.
Well, awareness, from my understanding of things, is the ability to become aware of something that I previously wasn't aware of. In other words, that's the interface that connects the known and unknown. And when we actually pay attention to that interface, what we didn't know before becomes known. Would you agree with that?
In a sense. It becomes known how? Through our thoughts?
It becomes known through becoming aware of it.
Okay, but what is
That's what awareness is for, is it not?
Okay, but what is it? If I'm saying I'm aware, let's say...
What used to be unknown?
Let's say...
It is what used to be unknown.
Okay, you take someone you love, all right, like your wife or whatever, or I do, and you say, I'm aware of you. You're aware of the body, right? What does it mean? What does it mean to say I'm aware of somebody? What does it mean to say I'm aware of my body? What is the body?
It means that you're paying attention to something, and you're becoming more and more aware of some things about the subject of your awareness that you previously didn't know about.
But I begin to discover that awareness of my body is not like something that I can say I know. It's something that leads me ever deeper into the unknown, because as I go into the cellular structure, so to speak, as I begin to sense the spacious quality of the sensation, it almost becomes transparent. And it's as though everything flows through that transparency. So when I was younger, and I said I knew my body, what I knew was something that was limbs and organs and structures and so on. Now, when I say, to some extent, I'm in touch with my body, it's more as a sense of openness. It's a kind of quality of not knowing and yet immediate presence too. But the mind, of course, comes in and says, oh, yes, I know that. This is this and this is that. Or the emotions come in and say, oh, I like that, or I'm frightened of it. Andreas was talking about fear of death and so on. The emotions come in and I get frightened of something. But the presence itself is the miracle. The fact that I'm even here, present.
Well, the emotions, for example, are obviously interconnected and perhaps inseparable from the physical body. There is no such emotion that would not be sensed in the body. There is no way to have emotions without having a physical body. Would you agree with that?
Well, because I have a physical body, I have no way of knowing. But
okay.
If, for example, let's be a futurist for a moment. Let's be a futurist for a moment. Let's talk about some of these futurists who are saying that it will be possible someday to put our brain into a mechanical, robot-like creature. There are people who are really seriously working on these things, PhDs and so on. Are those people going to have emotions or not? I don't know. I just don't know.
As you profess presence, I think futurizing about how we can have emotions without physical body is departing from being present.
No, you asked me. You asked me a question. I'm answering your question, Lama. You said, can you have emotions without a physical body? And I said, I don't know. I said, there are some people, however, who are trying to work on that. I'm sorry?
Right, that's an excellent, honest answer. Now,
I don't know.
Is there any way to have thoughts?
I'm sorry?
Pardon me?
No, I didn't get
Is there any way to have thoughts without having a physical body?
Well, it's all contingent on the brain, of course. Thoughts, yes. I would agree with that.
The answer is yes?
No, I'm saying I would agree that thoughts require a brain that thinks, so far as I know.
So in other words, your answer is no. There is no way to have thoughts without physical body. And when we have thoughts and we have emotions, they also physiologically manifest in terms of certain large or small movements, certain tensions, certain gestures, and other things that happen in the physical body as the emotions ripple through it.
There are all kinds of energetic, I agree, there's all sorts of energetic processes that go on. But some people have awareness of that, and some people do not have awareness of that. Some people have awareness of their breath, and some people do not have awareness of that. But I am saying that the awareness itself is what makes us uniquely, the potential of awareness, of full awareness, is what makes us human. And the fact that we can be present or not be present to these processes that are going on makes all the difference.
Well, that's interesting because
the presence is a miracle.
For example, most animals and other non-human beings are generally present. You hardly find a squirrel or a cow or a bird who would be stuck in the past or would be fantasizing about the future, like those futurists you're talking about.
Well, right? I don't know. I know, for example, I know my dog can dream. She has dreams.
Oh, of course, the dog can dream, but the dream is happening at the present moment.
Yes.
The fact that it may be dreaming about something that happened in the past is the nature of the dream, yes. But the dream is unfolding in the present moment.
Yes, and for many human beings live their life either dreaming, thinking, remembering about the past, or dreaming about the future and anticipating the future. Right. And what we're talking about is a kind of presence of what is actually here now, right?
Right. So even if we are catching ourselves dreaming, whether it's a daydream or a night dream, we still can be awake to the fact that we're dreaming.
Absolutely. That is one of the things that many people miss. Many people say, the mind is the problem. They say thinking is the problem. It's not the problem. Having thoughts doesn't keep you from experiencing anything, as long as you can be present to the thoughts, right?
As long as you don't confuse the thoughts for what really is going on.
That's right.
And what's really going on is that, right. So in other words, we have tendency as human beings to superimpose our dreams over our experience of the present moment. And then we actually depart from the present moment and buy into the dreaming, so much so that we start focusing on the map instead of the territory, as Alfred Korzybski would put it.
Sure. And one of the problems is that we identify ourselves with the thought or with the emotion or with the sensation. So, for example, take pain. you can have pain, and you can become so identified with it that you become nothing but the pain. In my own work with breath, what we work with is beginning to appreciate the breath in such a way that the breath takes us back into presence itself, into what's beneath the breath. Because as the breath begins to quiet down quite naturally, and you begin to become more present to the breath, you also begin to become more present to all the other processes that are going on in the human organism. And you may experience them as energies, you may experience them as thought forms, you may experience them as emotional tinges, you may experience them as comfort or discomfort. But suddenly, you realize that pain that you had doesn't have to occupy your whole attention. You would agree with that. It's just part of the whole. And the wholeness is, when you start experiencing yourself as a whole being with thoughts and emotions and sensations all connected. I'm not saying they're all separate little things. They're all connected. But you begin to realize you're all of that, and then you're that who sees. You're that which sees. You are the awareness.
In other words, what you're saying is that you begin to experience pain as a part of the process that you're going through, not the whole thing.
As part of the whole.
In other words,
yes.
You dissociate from pain. You no longer identify with pain. You actually look at it at the bigger picture, where pain is just one of many things that are happening.
Yeah, pain is like a contraction of a certain kind of energetic contraction of energy. And you just see it for what it is.
Pain is essentially a signal that the body is providing to the central nervous system, indicating that something is not working and attention is needed.
Yes, absolutely.
Oftentimes our awareness isn't developed enough, or we have a certain threshold of pain that the pain needs to cross. So that essentially leads to accumulating so much pain before we start noticing something, that once we notice it, we become overwhelmed with pain. But if we actually pay attention to ourselves on a regular basis, we will notice that something is potentially developing that can feel like pain if we don't pay attention to it. It's just we don't even wait till it turns into pain. We start paying attention to it, and where attention goes, energy flows, which promotes healing or empowerment of that part of the body that potentially could be in pain if we don't notice it in the first place.
Absolutely, absolutely. But not every pain is just going to go away that way. There are some pains that will not go away that way.
Right. Like, for example, you get hit by a bus that you were talking about a few minutes ago.
Right. And so, to me, it's not so much a matter of focusing on the pain as it is including the pain in a full perception of what is going on. And more than that, beginning to realize that all of this, pain, pleasure, thoughts, emotions, sensations, all of this is arising from where? It's all arising right now and here. And if I can begin to live more in the here-ness of that, in the now-ness of that, then I begin to feel a wholeness, and I begin to feel that there's a kind of miracle here, that my life is a gift.
So, for example, if you get hit by a bus and you get hurt, and then you feel pain, does the pain result from the collision with a bus, or is it something that is happening at the present moment?
Well, of course it's happening. I don't quite understand your question.
Well, the question is that
let's talk about.
You're
talking about a theoretical here. Let's talk about my back pain when I got hit by a car. Let's talk about an actual thing instead of some hypothetical thing. I haven't been hit by a bus.
Okay, so car or bus doesn't matter.
I got rear-ended by a hit-and-run drunk driver some years ago, and I still have pain from that.
Right.
Okay? So I'll talk about something very real for myself. When I was hit by her, many people ask me, they say, well, you must be angry that this drunk driver hit you. No, I'm not angry. I'm not angry at all, because life life is what happens in our lives. We don't know what's going to happen in our lives. And there's a certain attitude that we can begin to have that is so spacious that whatever happens in our lives, we do the best we can. We obviously don't want to be hit by, a drunk driver, but we may be. Now, are we going to let our attention dwell on that for the next 20 years, or 10 years, or 5 years, or 5 minutes? Or are we going to just simply realize that who I am is this, I think Rumi said it. He called about it, he has a poem called A Guest House. It's like we're a guest house, and many things come to our door. And Rumi says, whatever they are, you let them in and you welcome them with a smile. You welcome them with appreciation, because some may be coming to clean out your house. We don't know why they've been sent to us. We don't know where they're coming from. Even this woman who hit me, I learned so many lessons from this that there was no way I could get negative about what happened to me, because it came into a kind of field of presence in which it brought me a great appreciation for my life and began to make me realize that my breath really matters. And it matters in the sense that it is given to me. It's a miracle. And so, again, just getting back to how I teach, which is so important, is that many people take their breath for granted. They say, all right, you're going to become aware of your breath, you're going to see what the problem is with it, and you're going to fix it. No. That way is the way of the mind, because whatever you may say about this, the mind will have its theories about what it should do. We should pace the breath. It should go slower or faster, and so on. We don't really know how the breath should be, in spite of all the pranayama books that have been written, in spite of all the Taoist books about breath that have been written, in spite of everybody's experiences. Each of us is different, and each of us has a slightly different need at that moment now in relation to the breath. And so it's through our own presence that we can awaken to that. And so what my work is about is coming back to the fact that we don't really know. That yes, and even if the body does what it needs to do, we still don't know, because it's by releasing all the unnecessary crap, all the tension that we have, by learning how to let go of that, all the thoughts that tell us we should be this way, we should be that way, we should be politically correct, we should be not rude, we should be all those things that come in. It's those things that actually keep us from this sense of presence. We can be present to all of those things, but when they come in, they generally take our attention. And then we stop looking, we stop listening, we stop sensing. And when you're working with the breath, it's all about the awareness. It's not about doing something. That's kind of, I kind of wanted to bring it back a little bit to this question of how I work with the breath, which you asked earlier.
Right. And it sounds like you work with the breath in a way that brings people more into the present moment, and also encourages them to start being instead of doing something.
Yes, absolutely. Instead of trying to, change your breathing, what I like to say is get to know it through intimate awareness, sense and feel it. What does it feel like? When the in-breath and the out-breath happens, what happens after the out-breath? Is there a pause? Do you try to fill the gap? Do you get anxious? There's all sorts of things that happen through conditioning, because we're so conditioned, Lama. I think we're so conditioned to think a certain way. We're Westerner, we in the West, we're brought up in a certain way. We're conditioned to think about progress and this and that. And so we start looking at ourselves through those lenses. And part of what I try to do is to get us back to the raw experience of what is it like just to breathe? What does it mean just to breathe? What does it mean to just be aware without forming conclusions about how we should be breathing, what we should be aware of, all of that. And that, right, by the way, that is not so easy. It doesn't. For some people, it may take years. For some people, it may take minutes. You can't just go to a course and learn that, because a large part of it depends on your own attitude towards yourself. How willing you are to let go of everything you think you know.
Well, that's why I don't even teach about breathing in my Qigong practice. I teach to realize what it is that you think of yourself and how you relate to your natural physical expressions and experiences, whether or not you're trying to stifle them or control them or manipulate them or pretend they don't happen or anything else, that essentially is not natural. And how can you let go of these artificial, contrived ways of doing something to yourself so you, for once, allow yourself to be?
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. That's also, in your words, it's also how I work.
Thank you, Dennis, so much for sharing with us about your work. And just to conclude, let me ask you, how can our listeners find out about your upcoming events at Esalen Institute? Should they go to esalen.com?
Esalen.org would be for my retreat. That's this next week. It's from March 13 to 18. So just go to www.esalen.org and then just put in Dennis Lewis or put in Free Your Breath, Free Your Life, and it'll take you to the write-up, and you can sign up right there if you're interested. Also, I have some websites, DennisLewis.org. And then I also have a blog where I have a lot of interesting articles and other material, DennisLewisBlog.com. And I also have a podcast called DennisLewisPodcast.com. And I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter. So there's lots of ways also to get in touch with me if you'd like to. On Facebook, it's Dennis.Lewis. And on Twitter, it's just Denlew, Denlew. So I'd love to hear from people. If anyone heard this and wants to communicate with me, I really do enjoy communicating with people. And you'll see if you come to my Facebook page, go to my website, I will get back to you if you write me with questions or comments or whatever.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dennis, for sharing with us a lot about your teachings and your work. And I wish you all the best in your endeavors, and I hope you can enjoy Esalen for me, too.
Oh, great. Thank you, Lama. Thanks for inviting me back, and I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Take care of yourself. You have been listening to the interview with Dennis Lewis, The Secrets of Qigong Masters. This show has been brought to you by Academy of Qidao, the first and only school in the world offering professional training in Qigong coaching. To find out about the Academy of Qidao and the certification programs for Qigong coaching, please visit www.qidao.org, QIDAO.org. The Secrets of Qigong Masters has also been brought to you by Mastery Journal, the international online publication dedicated to mastery in Qigong, internal arts, and life. Please enjoy reading the most recent issues of the Mastery Journal at www.mastery-journal.com. This show has also been brought to you by the World Congress on Qigong, that is going to convene in San Francisco on April 29th through May 2nd of 2011.